So we're going to now build on the collect requirements process we just did. We're going to select and define the final requirement list in detail and then craft a descriptive scope statement. So details from the scope statement created in this process are going to be used to evaluate their future change requests within or outside the project boundaries. So this is about change control. Once we define the scope, any changes, change control. We'll also use this to create the scope baseline. You'll see what that is. It's going to be this scope statement plus 2 other project artifacts. Helps you get more detailed in planning, of course, schedule, cost, resource, everything comes from the scope statement. This is the most important document for PMI, by the way. You get questions on the exam that says, a new executive joins the project and they want to know what the project is about. Which of the following is the best documents to provide them? And they'll give you something like A, immediately charter. And we'll say, oh, charter's high level and executives like high level information, so we'll give them the charter. And that's not going to be the answer. The answer is going to be the scope statement. It's the most detailed document for PMI. It's the most detailed document we have. It explains what we're doing, what we're not doing, how we're doing it, how we'll get sign off. So here's the ITTOs we're going to look at. Charter, plan, documents, EFs, no PAs. Use our expert judgment. We'll analyze the requirements. That's the data. We'll make decisions. We'll use our skills to facilitate this. Or if we're creating a product, we'll analyze that. And then in the end, we'll facilitate the development of a scope statement. And we may update some documents based on what we do. So let's see what that looks like. Detailed, detailed, detailed. We talked about the charter being high level. Scope statement, most detailed document. Detailed, detailed, detailed. All right, so the document includes the scope description of what you're going to deliver. Talks about the deliverables themselves. Remember, they must be unique and verifiable. Okay. We looked at acceptance criteria. Right. The conditions that must be met for the project deliverable to be accepted. And then what's out of scope, the project exclusions. All right, so these are the four pieces to your scope statement that you want to make sure you include. Think about this for the exam, but that's what you're going to be looking at. A description of what you're doing, the deliverables themselves, acceptance criteria, and exclusions. Now, you have project and product scope. We talked about this earlier, all right? So project scope is the work performed to deliver a product, service, or result, whatever the project is, right? And you can measure that, right? Completion is measured against the project management plan, whereas product scope is the features and functionality of that actual product, service, or result. And we measure that against the product requirements. So that's project scope, product scope. We measure the scope of a project against the project management plan. We measure the scope of a product against the product requirements. Key outputs here. We might update some project documents, right? We're talking about key outputs. We have the scope statement, and now we're talking about document updates. You may not get document updates. Anytime you see updates, there's document updates, there's updates to the project management plan. There's also change requests that we'll see sometimes as outputs. Those are always potential. You potentially, based on what you're doing in this process, could get some updates to documents. Now, if you're planning for the first time, obviously you should get some new information because, you're just now uncovering it. But new assumptions and constraints, will reveal themselves. The requirements documentation itself likely will become new or modified as you develop your scope statement. Some, a couple of requirements here or there might get dropped, as we read in that last case study too. Your traceability matrix might get modified, or your stakeholder registers. These are just some, why we get document updates as a potential output of this process. And again, think of it as this as well. We could be in flight in our project, and through change control, we go back and make a change. And so then we now have to go back and update the scope. Thank you. We now have to go back and update the scope statement. So that's where we can get these sort of project documents updated. Okay. And the details defined in the charter. The project details defined in the charter and the required project documents provide the information necessary to create the scope statement. just remember, yeah, I know it says details, and I know it's not saying it's detailed, but charter's high level. I just want to keep saying that so it sticks in your brain. Charter's high level, everywhere is detailed. So charter high level, characteristics, approval requirements, and then you get the documents, the requirements documentation, any assumptions, and then the risk register. We haven't talked about that yet, but we may look at how we're developing our project, and based on, analysis of the risk, we may choose a different path. Expert judgment, we've talked about this a lot, so I won't beat this with the dead, I won't beat this one too much, but again, we'll look at different ways. So in this sense, in analyzing the data, alternatives analysis becomes a way of looking at scope. And so this is another way to meet the same requirement. So I like to use In and Out as an example here. How many of you have eaten at In and Out? Oh, you have, okay. Oh, okay, I'm gonna say, okay, well, Maggie, you gotta get to the West Coast one day and get you some In and Out. It's a burger joint. The whole thing that they tout is everything's fresh. So what's awesome is you can go and see them with a little like a masher. They put the potato in and they pull the lever down, and then there goes your fries. You see them making your fries right there and then, right? All this stuff, right? So, let's see, Chris, you're there with Dana. You mentioned you've been to In and Out. What happens when you get into the drive-through and there's too many people?
They come out, right?
They come out. Ooh. Check that out, Maggie. Imagine you go to a burger joint, you go to the drive-through, there's like 5 cars in the way, and you're getting ready, you're looking to back up and get in, but nope, somebody comes out and they take your order. How would you feel about that?
Sorry, was that for me?
Yeah, that was for you. I'm just because you've never been there, so I'm really curious. How would you feel if someone just came and took your order?
So, I mean, that would be nice instead of waiting, or like going physically in.
That's true. She's very practical, like my wife. She's like, no, we just go in. Maybe we just go in. Okay. So I bring that up.
Sometimes going in's even worse, though. You'll be waiting forever.
It is. So here's the idea. As a process improvement exercise or project, the idea was, okay, well, studies show that if there's 6 cars in the drive-thru, the person's going to be looking to back out and go somewhere else. So what did In and Out do? They decided we're going to send somebody out and take your order. It's an alternative. It's an alternative, right? So if you go to the right In and Out, Chris, they'll come out in roller skates. If you go to a nice retro one, they come out, like the real old school ones, and they take your order. So, anyways, back to the point here is that the whole idea is that's an alternatives analysis. So here's a project that's not creating a product. It's just looking at a different way, right? And by the way, even though we feel like they're making our food faster, they're not. They just took your order earlier, got your money earlier. They got your commitment earlier so that you don't feel so anxious and you're just sitting in the car. Now you can have that conversation with somebody like, they're making my food, but before you're thinking about what you're going to get. But anyways, I bring that up because now if they decide to make a change to their product line, and one thing, Maggie, about In and Out is that they have this menu that is unknown. You got to know about it, like animal fries. You can get your fries with chopped grilled onions and cheese on it, and that becomes animal, but it's not on the menu. You don't know, but it's like a secret menu, right? So their menu is very basic. You got burgers, fries, shakes, and drinks, and that's it. I'm not going anywhere outside of that. Now, if they decide to make a change to one of those, now it becomes product analysis. And so this is the idea.
How many times do you eat it In and Out? Because you're like in love with these guys.
Do you like In and Out?
This is funny. I haven't eaten fast food in probably...
No! Don't say it. Don't tell us. Don't make us feel bad.
I'll just say it again. I used to box. There was a time in my life I was a boxer. So, I've kept the diet habits the same. All right, so but I love their anyways. I just love In and Out. It's just a good, But do you know they're the number 3 ranked company on Glassdoor to work for? They're like, they have great environment, everything. They pay their people well. But anyways, I've digressed. So we talk about alternatives analysis, now product analysis. I'm harping on this because the exam's going to trip you up. They're going to talk about a project, and they're going to describe the project. And you need to make sure that you determine if this project is making a product or not. Because and they're going to talk about how you're making changes, how you're developing the scope statement, and you're thinking about different things that you want to do to the project. If your project is to create a product, the tool and technique that you're going to use is product analysis. If your product is not creating a product, then alternatives analysis or data analysis is going to be the answer. So keep that in mind for the exam. And I mean, that holds true in practical application, right? If it's,
Can you say that one more time, please?
if your project is to create a product, then product analysis is going to be the tool and technique that's used when you're defining scope. If your project is to simply perform a service or an upgrade, or it's not to create a product, then the tool and technique that you'll use when developing your scope statement will be data analysis / alternatives analysis. Okay. And then the other tool and technique will be decision making, and you'll determine which of these. Remember, there's like 5 or 6 decision making type techniques. You would have determined that when you were planning scope management, right, on how you were going to get this done.